On a spring morning in Manhattan, a 72-year-old black woman named Maddie Parker stepped into one of NYC's most exclusive new cafes, seeking a moment's warmth from the streets. But the owner's cold stare and venomous words turned her simple rest stop into a public spectacle of cruelty and prejudice. Humiliated before a crowd of indifferent patrons, she found herself the target of unjust scorn. Yet, among the sea of averted gazes and uncomfortable silence, someone of immense influence had witnessed the entire ordeal unfold. What happened next would shake the foundations of the establishment, catch the attention of millions around the world, and change her life forever. The crisp air nipped at Maddie Parker's cheeks as she made her way down the bustling New York City sidewalk. At 72 years old, Maddie had seen her fair share of spring days in the city, but this one felt particularly biting. The sky hung low and gray, heavy with the promise of rain, while a steady breeze carried drifting pollen through the air. Maddie tugged her light jacket closer around her slender frame, its thin layer barely enough to ward off the unexpected chill beneath it. Her old turtleneck sweater offered little additional warmth to the breeze that seeped between the pores of her clothes. Her arthritis flared with each step, turning the uneven pavement into a careful challenge. A quick glance at her watch revealed the time, 12:45 p.m. The ever-present reminder of her medication schedule lingered in her thoughts, a routine she had long since accepted as part of her daily life. As she rounded a corner, a new storefront caught her eye. The ground floor of a sleek glass-fronted office tower now boasted an elegant cafe. Elaborate floral arrangements framed the entrance, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the muted tones of the city street. Ribbons and banners proclaimed "Grand Opening," congratulations from various companies and families. Maddie paused, considering. The pollen was beginning to irritate her eyes and throat, and the thought of a warm refuge from the chilly air was appealing. She checked her watch again, 12:50 p.m. There was still time before her critical 1 p.m. medication. With a small nod to herself, Maddie pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside. The interior was a study in modern minimalism, clean lines, polished surfaces, and muted earth tones. The scent of freshly ground coffee and baked goods wafted through the air, and soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Maddie's eyes scanned the room, taking in the mix of patrons. Most seemed to be professionals from the surrounding office buildings, dressed in crisp suits and tapping away at laptops. A few tables hosted what appeared to be business meetings, voices kept low as they leaned in over steaming cups. She made her way to a round booth table near the back, settling into the plush leather seat with a small sigh of relief as she shrugged off her jacket. Maddie's mind turned to her usual careful considerations. Her Addison's disease required a delicate balance, strict timing for medications, careful monitoring of hydration and salt intake. Even a simple cafe order needed to be weighed against potential impacts on her condition. A young waitress approached, notepad in hand and a bright smile on her face. "Welcome to Whitaker's. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Maddie returned the smile warmly. "Yes, dear. I'd like a cup of hot water, please. And perhaps something light and sweet. Do you have any fruit tarts?" The waitress nodded. "We have a lovely selection of mini tarts, lemon, raspberry, or mixed berry. Which would you prefer?" "The mixed berry sounds perfect," Maddie replied. As the waitress turned to leave, Maddie called out softly, "Oh, and could I trouble you for an extra warm towel?" "Of course, ma'am. I'll be right back with your order." As the waitress walked away, Maddie reached into her purse and pulled out a small pill bottle. She set it on the table along with a compact mirror and a tube of lipstick. The routine was so ingrained she hardly had to think about it. Check her appearance, touch up her makeup if needed, then take her medication with a sip of water. It was a small ritual that helped her feel in control, a moment of normalcy in the face of a chronic condition that often left her feeling at the mercy of her own body. Maddie glanced at her watch once more. 12:58 p.m. Right on schedule. She allowed herself a small smile, feeling a sense of accomplishment at navigating another day successfully. Little victories, she reminded herself, were still victories. The cafe's atmosphere washed over her, and Maddie found herself relaxing into the booth. Perhaps this new place would become a regular stop for her. A pleasant change of scenery from her usual haunts. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the soft music and gentle hum of conversation soothe her. Maddie's eyes snapped open at the sound of a throat being cleared pointedly. She looked up, expecting to see the waitress returning with her order. Instead, she found herself face to face with a man whose expression could only be described as openly hostile. He was tall and lean with sharp features. His crisp white shirt and dark tie marked him as part of the staff, but nothing was welcoming about his demeanor. "Can I help you?" Maddie asked, her voice calm despite the sudden tension she felt. The man's lip curled in a sneer. "I think the question is, what do you think you're doing here, ma'am?" His voice dripped with disdain. Maddie blinked, taken aback by the blatant hostility. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm just here to have a quick snack and some water." The man glared at her for a moment before speaking again. "I was told you requested an extra warm towel." His gaze swept over her from head to toe, his sneer deepening. "Sorry, but we don't accommodate special requests." Maddie nodded understandingly. "Okay, no problem, sir. I'll just have the pastry and the hot water then." The man barked out a harsh laugh. "Pastry? In those clothes? With that skin color? I don't think so, Grandma. This isn't some charity kitchen." "Excuse me, sir," Maddie said, her voice steady despite the sting. "I can pay for those pastries." Her words seemed to make little impact as the man's sneer widened into a cruel smile. "You're a paying customer? Well, let me make something clear. Your kind brings bad luck. You'll scare away our real customers. The professionals and rich people making business deals. This isn't some dive bar or greasy spoon. We cater to a certain clientele and you're not it." Maddie's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. "Mr. Whitaker, I don't know what's prompted this behavior, but I assure you, I'm a paying customer just like anyone else here." Whitaker leaned in, his voice low and menacing. "Listen here, your kind shouldn't even be in this place." Before Maddie could respond, the young waitress returned with her order, carefully balancing a tray. Time seemed to slow as Maddie watched Whitaker turn toward her. His movements were deliberate, calculated. He intercepted the tray with a flick of his wrist, sending the hot water splashing across Maddie's arms and face in a scalding arc. The berry tart followed, smearing across her sweater. Maddie cried out in pain, her body trembling from the heat. The cafe fell silent, all eyes turning to the unfolding scene. Whitaker's voice dripped with false sincerity. "Oh my, how clumsy of me." He feigned concern as he looked Maddie over, his tone venomous. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Your appearance must have made me lose my focus." As Leonardo DiCaprio approached, his eyes met Maddie's. There was a gentleness in his gaze, a stark contrast to the hostility she had faced from Whitaker. Without hesitation, he knelt beside her, offering a hand. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked, his voice low and kind. Maddie nodded, unable to find her voice. With Leonardo's assistance, she slowly got to her feet, wincing at the aches from her fall. Whitaker, momentarily thrown by the unexpected appearance of the actor, quickly recovered his bravado. "Mr. DiCaprio," he said, his tone dripping with false politeness, "I'm afraid you've wandered into a rather unpleasant situation. This woman was just leaving." Leonardo turned to face Whitaker, his expression hardening. "The only unpleasant thing I see here is your treatment of this lady. Would you care to explain why you felt it necessary to physically remove an elderly woman from your establishment?" Whitaker's face flushed. "This is my cafe. I have the right to refuse service to anyone." "Refuse service, perhaps," Leonardo replied coolly. "But assault? Discrimination? I think you'll find the law takes a rather dim view of such actions." As Whitaker sputtered, trying to formulate a response, Leonardo turned back to Maddie. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you out of here and find something warm for you." With that, Leonardo guided Maddie towards the exit, his presence creating a natural path through the now buzzing crowd of onlookers. As they reached the door, Leonardo paused, looking back at Whitaker. "I'd suggest you take a long, hard look at how you run this place," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed cafe. "Because I have a feeling you're going to be answering some difficult questions very soon." And with that, Leonardo DiCaprio and Maddie stepped out into the rainy New York afternoon, leaving behind a stunned cafe and a fuming James Whittaker. The cool, misty air hit Maddie's face as she and Leonardo exited the cafe. The earlier threatening storm had settled into a light, steady rain, but even this felt refreshing after the stifling atmosphere inside. "Wait here a moment," Leonardo said gently, guiding Maddie to a sheltered spot under the building's overhang. He jogged quickly to a small kiosk next door, returning moments later with a steaming cup. "It's just some hot tea," he explained, pressing the warm cup into Maddie's trembling hands. "It should help take the chill off." Maddie nodded gratefully, wrapping her fingers around the cup and savoring its warmth as she sipped the soothing liquid. Leonardo's expression turned thoughtful. "What happened in there?" "It wasn't right," he said, his voice low and intense. "People need to know about this kind of behavior. Would you be okay if I tried to do something about it?" Maddie looked up at him, a mix of emotions playing across her face. After a moment she nodded. "If it might prevent someone else from going through this, then yes." Leonardo's face set with determination. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times and then held it up. Maddie realized he was starting a live stream on his social media, carefully positioning himself so the cafe's name was visible in the background. "Hey everyone," Leonardo began, his voice clear and controlled. "I'm coming to you live from outside of Whittaker's Cafe in New York City, where I've just witnessed something truly disturbing. The owner of this establishment, a man named James Whittaker, has just engaged in blatant discrimination and physical assault against an elderly woman." As Leonardo continued detailing the events that had transpired inside, Maddie watched in amazement as the world seemed to respond in real time. People on the street began to slow and gather, recognizing the actor and realizing something significant was happening. Phones appeared in hands, capturing the moment and spreading it further. Within minutes, the first fans began to arrive, drawn by social media alerts and the growing crowd. They clustered around, phones raised, adding their own streams and commentary to the unfolding story. Leonardo, to his credit, kept the focus on the issue at hand. He described Whittaker's actions in detail, emphasizing the need for accountability and change. As he spoke, Maddie noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. A van with a local entertainment news station's logo had pulled up, and a small crew was quickly setting up equipment. The crowd continued to grow, spreading across the sidewalk and beginning to spill into the street. Traffic slowed as drivers craned their necks to see what was causing the commotion. More media vans appeared, their presence drawing even more attention. Just as the situation threatened to become overwhelming, a sleek black car pulled up and two men in suits emerged. They moved with purpose, creating a protective barrier around Leonardo and Maddie. "Mr. DiCaprio," one of them said quietly, "we should move you to a more secure location." Leonardo nodded, then turned to Maddie. "My security team," he explained. "They'll make sure we're safe. Are you ready to go?" Maddie glanced back at the cafe, where she could see Whittaker's pale face peering out from behind the blinds. She squared her shoulders and nodded. "Yes, I think I am." The security team efficiently guided them through the crowd to the waiting car, as the chauffeur held the door open, shielding Maddie from the press of bodies and flashing cameras. She felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time since entering the cafe, she felt truly safe. Once inside the luxury vehicle, Maddie sank into the plush leather seat with a sigh. Through the tinted windows, she watched as reporters set up cameras and microphones outside the cafe. The scene was surreal. All this commotion sparked by what had begun as a simple stop for hot water and a snack. Leonardo settled in beside her, his face serious. "The media coverage will make sure Whittaker can't sweep this under the rug," he explained. "It won't undo what happened to you, but it might prevent him from treating others the same way in the future." Maddie nodded, a mix of emotions swirling within her. As the car pulled away from the curb, leaving the chaos behind, she found herself wondering about the man beside her. This unexpected champion who had stepped into her life at just the right moment. As the luxury car glided through the rain-slick streets of New York, a comfortable silence settled between Maddie and Leonardo. The chaos of the cafe scene faded into the background, replaced by the soft hum of the engine and the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers. After a few moments, Maddie turned to Leonardo, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. "Mr. DiCaprio," she began, her voice soft but steady, "I can't thank you enough for what you did back there, but why? Why did you care so much about helping someone like me?" Leonardo's expression softened, a hint of sadness touching his eyes. "Someone like you," he repeated gently. "You mean someone deserving of respect and basic human decency? I'd hope anyone would step in to help." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "But if you're asking why it resonated with me personally, well, that goes back a ways." Leonardo shifted in his seat, angling himself towards Maddie. "My mother, Betty, she worked as a waitress for most of her life. We didn't have much when I was growing up, and I saw firsthand the kind of prejudice and hardship she faced." His voice took on a warm, reverent tone as he spoke of his mother. "She was the strongest person I've ever known. No matter how tough things got, she never lost her dignity. But I saw how much it hurt her when people looked down on her or treated her as less than because of her job or our economic situation." Maddie nodded, a look of understanding crossing her face. "It leaves marks that don't show on the outside," she said softly. "Exactly," Leonardo agreed. "And in my line of work, I've been on both sides of that coin. I've experienced the adulation that comes with fame, but I've also felt the sting of public judgment and misunderstanding. It's given me a deep appreciation for those who face prejudice and mistreatment every day." He leaned back, his gaze distant for a moment. "A lot of the roles I choose, they're often characters who are overlooked or misunderstood by society. I guess in a way, it's my attempt to give voice to those who might not otherwise be heard." Maddie listened intently, seeing the actor in a new light. As Leonardo spoke, she found herself reaching into her purse, her fingers closing around the damp pill bottle. She hesitated for a moment before pulling it out. "Mr. DiCaprio," she said, her voice catching slightly. "This is what started all the trouble in the cafe." She held out the bottle, its label smeared and peeling. "I have a condition called Addison's disease. These pills, they're not just medication. They're my lifeline." Leonardo's expression turned serious as he examined the bottle. "I've heard of Addison's disease, but I don't know much about it. Can you tell me more?" Maddie nodded, launching into an explanation she'd given many times before, but never under such surreal circumstances. "It's an adrenal insufficiency. My body doesn't produce certain essential hormones, so I have to take medication to replace them. The timing is crucial. Missing a dose can lead to a crisis, which can be life-threatening." She sighed, looking at the ruined pills. "And they're expensive. I budget carefully each month to afford them. When that man dumped water on me, he didn't just ruin my clothes. He put my health at risk and wasted money I can't easily replace." Leonardo listened intently, his brow furrowed in concern. Without hesitation, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. "Miss Parker," he said, using her name for the first time. "I'd like to help if you'll let me." Maddie watched, a mix of emotions playing across her face as Leonardo wrote out a check. When he handed it to her, her eyes widened at the amount. "Mr. DiCaprio, this is far too much. I couldn't possibly." He held up a hand, smiling gently. "Please, I insist. Use what you need for your medication, and if there's anything left over, consider it a buffer for future expenses. Or maybe a little treat for yourself after what you've been through today. You deserve it." Maddie accepted the check with trembling hands, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what else to say." Leonardo's voice, smooth and tinged with a hint of playful charm, softened as he addressed the elderly woman. "Now then, my dear. Where shall I whisk you away to? Your doctor, perhaps? Could be to sort out that medication of yours, or straight home to your apartment." She smiled gently, her voice warm with gratitude. "Home at my apartment would be nice." Leonardo nodded with a slight tilt of his head, his expression a mix of care and theatrical flourish. "Home it is then. Then your chariot awaits, madam." Leonardo and Maddie shared a quiet drive through the rain-slicked streets of New York. The weight of the day's events hung in the air, but for the first time in hours, Maddie felt a sense of calm. As the car turned onto her street, she glanced over at Leonardo, who had made an unexpected difference in her life. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice steady now. "For everything." Leonardo smiled, his eyes soft with understanding. "No need to thank me. We all deserve a little kindness. I'm just glad I could be there when you needed it." As the car came to a stop in front of her apartment, Leonardo turned to face her one last time. "Take care of yourself, Maddie. And don't let anyone treat you less than you deserve." Maddie nodded, her heart full. She stepped out of the car, the rain now a gentle mist, and watched as Leonardo's vehicle disappeared into the night. Inside her apartment, Maddie felt the weight of the world lift off her shoulders. Though the storm had come and gone, she knew that, no matter what, she had someone in her corner. And for the first time in a long while, she felt truly hopeful.